Welcome to the podcast, From One Mother of an Addict to Another. This is a space of sharing heartfelt personal experiences, insightful thoughts, and powerful suggestions, which can hopefully assist and offer strength navigating your journey alongside a loved one facing addiction and mental illness.
Hi, welcome to my new podcast series, Open When Letters. My first episode is Open When You're Struggling to Communicate Effectively with Your Addicted Adolescent. Now, what this is each episode is going to have a different letter that you're writing to yourself. And you keep it in your home in a drawer. And when the time comes, you open that letter when it's addressing a topic or issue that you're struggling with. So the first one I felt would be open when you're struggling to communicate effectively, because that is really such a critical activity to practice over and over again. Some of the elements that, I wanted to discuss and start with is basically expressing and understanding compassion. How do we do that? Well, first of all, do not roll your eyes. When you're showing compassion to your addicted adolescent and when you're talking to your kid, keep a very even tone. Don't look stressed out. Don't look bored. Don't look, oh my God, we're talking about the same subject again. Oh my God, I can't believe he's bringing this up. Oh gosh, I can't believe he's yelling at me. Stay calm. That's first of all. And remind yourself to stay calm. Now, whatever you write in this letter, it's going to remind you of what to do next time this happens again. And what you can say is, you tried your best to communicate. You tried not to take it to a whole other level. But this letter reminds you of how to do that and what points to remember and clarify and focus on improving and working on, because it's impossible to be great at this. This is something that over time you're going to experience different communication types with your child at different times in their life, and it's very hard to keep calm. And how you do that is by first listening and really hearing the words they're saying. And that is where you have to start. What did they just say? What were those exact words? I wonder why they're feeling that way. That's how you have to approach this. Not like, oh, are you calling me a name? Did you just say that to me after everything I've done for you? Yeah, that doesn't help. That actually is hurting their self-esteem. You don't need to point out the obvious to anyone, okay? That your kid knows. They're going to push your buttons. They're going to talk to you about exactly what you don't want to speak about. They're going to come at you. It's your fault. And so you need to remember that you have feelings too. So you have to remind yourself that you can't let the conversation go too far or too long. And if the addict starts getting very agitated, then it's time to stop the conversation. And at that point, you say, you know what? It seems that you're not happy right now, and you're very upset. And I think it's better if we come back to this conversation, maybe in an hour. Let's regroup. Think about what you want to say. Maybe you can figure out how you can say it in a nicer way to me so it's not so combative. And I look forward to having this conversation with you. Now, it does aggravate them when you're calm. I've been there and I've done that. But it's so important to stay calm and effective in the way you are speaking. So that is something you need to focus on. And that's something to put in your letter to yourself. Remember, stay focused, listen, And really, after your conversation, you might want to go in the room and just write down some things that you took from this conversation. He's feeling angry because his friend didn't bring him home from school today, and he's feeling upset because you weren't there to give him dinner, or you weren't there to help him with his homework, or you weren't there to drive him where he wanted to go, or you won't let him do something and all his friends are doing it. Whatever it is or isn't, those are things to write down, to address to yourself, to remind yourself to really listen, not just hear noise, because we often do that. And even in our conversations with our other family members, our husbands and wives, we often listen, but are we really listening and taking in what exactly the words they're saying and kind of understanding where they're coming from? That's really important. Now, I have found that you need to remind yourself to repeat what they said to them, so they know and understand that you're giving them the time to listen and you're respecting them. So what I would do is, as you're listening and you say, okay, so I understand that must have really made you feel bad that your friend didn't bring you home from school today and just left without even asking you if you needed a ride when he typically gives you a ride home. Do you think there's any reason that he might have done that? Do you think he wasn't going home? Maybe he wasn't coming past the house today. Did you think to ask him that? Or maybe he was in a hurry. Sometimes people have a lot going on in their own lives and they just forget and they're careless to take into consideration others. But that doesn't mean that they didn't want to take you home or want to be there for you. It just happens. So that is how I would address certain things. And it's very hard to stay calm and remember to go back and act like you're trying to solve the situation and find out what exactly is bothering them. And that would help you feel better and know that you're doing the best you can to stop them accusing you of things right in their tracks, because what's going to happen is that they'll use a lot of I statements, and then they're going to start blaming you, so to speak, and that has to stop. So you got to remind yourself and write a letter to yourself. Some of the things I would say in there would be about how, point one, I try to remind myself not to let the addict be nasty to me or say nasty things. How to not enable them, to allow them to get away with speaking to me that way. That is what it is. That is what I would write to myself personally. Remember, it's not your fault because he might have caught you off guard, but don't allow anyone to manipulate you to the point where you can't leave a conversation because they've hijacked it completely. And hijacking it is just, there's no conversation. It's just a rant. And if that's a rant, you need to remind yourself the rants are not going to work. Rants are not conversations, so you need to exit. And you need to say, listen, it seems that you just want to talk to someone. I understand that. But you're just having a conversation with yourself right now. You don't really want my input or my help or assistance. I have no problem getting you someone to listen to your complaints. And if you need to speak with someone, you need to go to therapy. I would gladly sign someone up with you if you want to do it online. I would address things that way. And I would remind myself personally to write that letter, not to let them manipulate you in the conversations, but to remember mostly encouragement. So today didn't work out great, or maybe it wasn't what you expected it to be. But I know tomorrow you could wake up and you have another opportunity to make it different and make it better. And that is what I would also write in my letter to myself. that maybe I felt like I screwed up. Maybe this conversation didn't go the way I wanted it to go. But I know that I have the ability to get better next conversation and know what I did this conversation that didn't work out and led to screaming and yelling and expressing anger, instead leading to encouragement. And that is where that takes a lot of technique, a lot of time, focusing on how you can speak in a tone and a manner that is not going to make someone on the defensive. And when they get defensive, they say things, whatever's on their mind. Now, we all know what reflective conversations are, and they're just going to reflect. So basically, they'll blame you for things that's really on their mind. So you need to listen. Those are good times to really listen and hear what they're saying, because it's not about you, it's about them. But they're blaming you. They're taking it out on you. So you were late. You didn't pick me up. You didn't have dinner ready when I was ready. You weren't home to discuss something with me. Those are the things, the tone and the way they speak needs to be addressed. So moving forward, there's a manner in which you can have respect from a conversation with your child who you have raised, and you will not accept anything less than that. That is something that you need to remind yourself of, and do not let the conversation get carried away. So that's really the first letter that I would write to myself, and I would put it in an envelope, put it in a drawer, and write number 1, struggling to communicate effectively. And so every time that occurs, you go to open up that letter and just see what you wrote. It's not a test. It's not like you have to write specific things, but it's almost like a letter to yourself to remind you that, okay, that conversation might not have gone the way I wanted it to go, because most of them are not going to. Or maybe you let your addict get a little more heated than you should have, and you should have stopped it a little sooner. Maybe you didn't have the patience and you just said, enough. I had enough. I can't listen anymore. I know that he used to speak, my son, for hours at me in mania. I couldn't believe, when I look back, how I allowed that to happen. It was abusive. It became abusive to me. But I didn't know it then, because when you're in it, you don't know. You don't know that. You don't realize that what it's taking from you, and how it's being spoken to you, because you just want your kid to be happy. So if you're sitting there for an hour just having to listen to them in their mania, all right, what's an hour? But don't let it get to that place. Don't let it get to the place where it's not a conversation anymore, because it's not going to end pretty. So if you can stop yourself a little sooner and with patience, that's the way to go. So I hope this helps. Don't forget to write your letter, and I look forward to you returning to my next episode, number 2, which will be to open when letters.
Thanks for tuning in. I trust this episode brought you insight and strength, offering valuable coping strategies. Stay connected with weekly content, plus follow if you enjoyed, and be sure to journal for your own self-care.